All right. I'm excited because we just came out of a wild series, Difficult People. Some of the series was stomping on toes. I mean like stomp, grind. First week we dealt with, what do I do when the difficult one is me? Second week we dealt with, what do I do when I don't know how to build right with people who are difficult? Well, all these things happen, and at the end of it all, we had to make a decision. Will I be stuck complaining about the people who are assigned to me, or will I do life the way that God desires? Now, after that, it was a conversation of, Lord, where would you take us? And the reality of this is, the Lord made this clear as day months ago. He said, I want you to deal with the conversation of deliverance. I want you to deal with the reality of deliverance, but there is something that we have to deal with. We have to deal with not only getting out of Egypt, we got to understand how to get the Egypt out of us. All right, get over yourself. It's about to go down. I'm excited because we're starting a brand new series called The Breaking Point. The Breaking Point. Someone say break. All right, that was cute. Somebody say break. There is something that happens when you understand what it is that you need to be broken. We waste so much time wandering around in the wilderness of our desires, trying to hand off what it is that we know we're attached to that is not pleasing God. I don't even have to go down the list. You're thinking right now, I wonder, does he know? And the reality is, God does. And though you can call it whatever you want, you can name it whatever you want, the world can change what it's saying, it is what it is. It is sin. All right. Everyone gets an opportunity to cuss today. Y'all ready? Say sin. Because for some of us, it's like a cuss word because we won't say it. We don't like to name it that because we don't like to call it what it is. Because as long as I don't identify it, I don't have to deal with it. Sin is something that you decide is more important than God. All right, let's do it. Sin is something that you decide is deserving of the throne of your heart before you place God in his rightful place. Every time we decide to sin, this is what happens. Pluck Jesus off my chest. Let me allow and promote sin to the seats of power. And here's the reality. Whether we like it or not, God is still present throughout every second of our decision making. All right. No one likes to think that. But when you were sleeping around, who was there? When we were finding roaches inside of the car to try to smoke something because we didn't have money to get another dime bag, who was there? When we had to sneak into the clinic hoping nobody knew what we was burning from, just put it under a different name. Who was there? We can call it what we want. But the reality of it is there are repercussions to the decisions that we make, knowing that it has no desire to be good unto us. And then we have the boldness and the arrogance to say, God bless me indeed. How can you bless me even when I decided that you are not worthy to stand in the place that you destined to be? And here I am crying out, Lord, save me. Lord, protect me. And he's saying, every time I show up, you close the door. Sin. The repercussion of something that was attached to us at birth. And no one likes to think of it that way, but before you even entered out of the womb, there was something on you. And as much as you want to blame your mama and him, as much as you want to blame the system, as much as you want to blame the man, as much as you want to blame the government, as much as you want to blame the president, as much as you want to blame your spouse, as much as you want to blame your children, there was something attached to you the moment that your eyes opened and breath entered into your lungs. Sin was not a pickup, it was an attachment. And there was a sinful nature inside of us. And the problem is, as believers, we believe the moment I say yes to Jesus, I don't got to worry about that. Oh, God. We're going to see today in the scripture that there is nothing inside of you good outside of the goodness of God. No one likes to believe it. But if you were left to your own devices without the conviction of the Holy Spirit, you would do everything you could if you knew you could get away with it. Half of us are not afraid to do the sin. We're worried about getting caught. And in this season of the church, we're dealing with the reality of breakthrough. Because to have growth, to have numbers, to have a growing church. Someone said, you're the fastest growing church in Prince William County. But if we're a fast growing church of people who are deciding to still be sinful, people still deciding to be bound, people who are still deciding to be ignorant to the goodness of God, we are not a growing church, we're a growing cult. Because the reality is this, I'd rather take 10 faithful than 800 in mess. Don't nobody want to deal with that because I'd rather be a seeker-sensitive church. And grace abounds and grace covers and grace this and grace is that. No, sin is sin. And now, just the preface before we go any further. If you take your tithes back because I stepped on your toes, can I tell you, he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. You have the ability to sow in. You are not the benefactor of it all. Go ahead and get that off your mind. You are not the greatest donator of the ministry of MOTIV8. There is something called mercy and grace and blessings that flow from heaven and a storehouse that is full that runneth over. And even when you retract your debit card, God says, I'll still pour in. In all due disrespect, get over yourself. Let's work. Breaking point. Grab your word. Turn to Romans. Turn to Romans. We starting off hot. This whole series is about to get bad. Romans. I want you to see this as we turn there because I'm going to give you time. Get your word. In the text, we understand that sin is not only on top of you, it's inside of you. But then there is something called covenant. Now, sin is something that was already a part of me, but then we make the decision in our lifestyles to attach to it. All right, let's do it. There is a decision that we have to make. Oh, yeah, I'm in my illustration bag. Let's rock. There is a decision that we have to make. And the reality is you have to plant yourself somewhere. Because sin is an attachment that is on you, but you can still roam freely without any attachment or tether. And today we're dealing with the conversation of being tethered. And being tethered is something that has enough resistance to not let you go over, but still have control over you. And for some of us, we're tethered to sin. Jacob, bring my mic down because I'm fitting to holler. There is something that we have to understand about when we see in this text. There is a sinful result that is inside of us, but there is something standing on the other side of it, and the enemy is saying, you already have it in you, but will you partner with me? Because covenant with the enemy is a partnership to see his will be done. Romans chapter 6. Romans chapter 6. Let's go through it. Romans chapter 6. Verse 15. Let's just go right verse 15. What then, shall we sin because we are not under the law but under grace? By no means. Pause. Shall we sin because we are not under the law but under grace? Grace abuse is manipulation. Grace abuse is witchcraft. And whether you want to call it that or not, grace abuse is you taking the throne of your heart and evicting God. And what we thought was, oh, The oldest passed, he came to abolish the law, which means he's now giving me free willing grace, which means I can do whatever I want as long as I say I'm sorry. Woo! As long as I repent. But the problem is you're not repenting, you're just telling. Shall we sin because we are not under the law, but under grace? Here's the response. By no means. Verse 16 goes on and says this. Don't you know that when you offer yourselves to someone as obedient slaves, you are slaves of the one you obey? Whew. Whether you are slaves to sin, which leads to death, or to obedience, which leads to righteousness. Park the bus right there. The problem is some of us thought the moment we said yes to Christ meant that we had no attachment to anything. We were just covered. The moment that you made the decision to say yes to Christ, you had to take one step further. Somebody say one step further. It's so easy to get free from bondage and thinking that, oh my gosh, I'm free. There's nothing else I have to do. It's covered by the blood of the Lamb. I'll sing How Great Thou Art every Sunday and all is well. You have to make the decision. What shall I attach myself with? Okay, well, Pastor, I'm still not getting it. Well, baby, you may be a little slow, but it's all good. We thought sin in its ability that we had the authority or the power to choose to put it on us. We were wicked since the beginning. If you just get beyond finding your cherry picking scriptures in the things that make you feel good, and you go back in the manuscripts and you go back to the Pentateuch and you see all that is in the beginning and the disablement of the people, all the things that God covered and the ways that he provided ways out of no way, and we were still yet obedient, then became disobedient, making idols out of anything that we could, a rock, brass, gold, silver, whatever we could get our hands on. That is not that of a people who are crafty. That is of a people who are wicked. Sin will make you believe that you have the intuitiveness to be greater than God. Sin. Sin is something that whether you know it or not, you are tethered. And we believe here that, oh, all is well. I don't sin as bad as my dad did. My dad used to drink a drink every hour on the hour. I just do it once a day. I'm not a lush. I'm not an addict. I haven't had to get my stomach pumped yet. I'm not a whoremonger. Yeah, I'll just pull something out the bag. I'm not a whoremonger. No one knows my body count. No one knows all the people that I've slept with. But can I tell you, there is a record in heaven. And though you may never have gotten their name, God does know. Jesus. Sin. Sin. What ends up happening is we don't notice that we are already entrenched and entangled with sin. Somebody say sin. We thought that if we could just be wise enough, if we could learn enough scripture, if we could become churchy enough, if we could attend every service, if we could learn every worship song, if we can get close to the pastor, if we could find a title, that meant that I no longer was tethered to anything. But if you never made the choice to break yourself free, you are still yet bound. What ends up happening is we believe that we have to go to some type of 7-Eleven to pick up sin. What ends up happening here in this text, it says, don't you know that when you offer yourselves to someone as obedient slaves, you offered yourself? Woo! Jesus. We believe that the enemy tricked us into following him. We willingly laid our life down to do his will. Stop acting dumb in your decision. You want to be bold about saying yes to Christ, but you want to act shy about following the devil. Oh, we low and slow today. There is a decision that you have to make. There is obedience. And what does obedience breed? Obedience breeds covenant. Because when I'm obedient, I'm agreeing to follow the rules and the statements that you told me I must bear to follow you. You're obedient. So what ends up happening is I'm taking the sin that was already on me. I'm finding the enemy because he told me where he was. Jesus. We think that he found us. He told you, meet me here. Just meet me at her house. Her husband's gone. Meet me at the house. She sent you the itinerary. The Delta flight is booked. He's not coming home for 3 days. Meet me at the house. And what ends up happening is we find ourselves unraveling the sin. The sinful nature inside of us, we begin pulling down from on top of us. Because what ends up happening is we come into agreement with sin through bondage, and I decide to tether myself to sinful nature. Because though the sin is on me, now I'm deciding to act in it. How many people can know that Christ was born into this earth to live a perfect, sinless life? That does not mean that he did not have the ability to sin. Which tells me that you can still live in flesh but not be bound to it. Oh God. In obedience, I find myself linking in covenant with sin. And I'm deciding in this moment of my life that greater is one day in the courts of hell than 1,000 with God. Jesus. I'd rather have one moment with you in sin if it means that I can feel it for a lifetime. And the problem is we get high off the memory of what we went through. So what ends up happening is we operate in covenant. And the scripture says that when you offer yourselves to someone as an obedient slave, you are slaves of the ones you obey. Whether you are slaves to sin, which leads to what ends up happening is we believe that sin, when we link with it, it remains in keeping us close. But this is where the enemy gets us, and this is why we mess up in our bondage and why we need deliverance. Because the enemy will trick you into believing that you got a little bit of slack. He'll let you get close to God, but he won't allow you to choose to be with him. Sinful nature and covenant will have you believing that you're a free bird. Oh, I get to still go back home. I still get to go join my small group. I still get to sing worship on Sunday. No one prophesied to me in the parking lot telling me they saw my sin. So that means I'm still covered. And one of the greatest mistakes that we can have is that of the elephant. Elephants, when they're raised in the circus, are nailed down with a tether and a rope. And at a young age, they learn, based upon their size, that they cannot pull the stake from the ground. The problem is, as the elephant grows in stature, the elephant has an unlocked potential inside of him to be able to cause the earth beneath his feet to rumble and even be found on the Richter scale. But based upon the obedience and covenant that he's had, that's which long standing, he never knows the power which he yields. And what ends up happening is the enemy, he's not worried about how deep you'll go. He's worried about how long you'll stay. Because it's not about the depth, it's about the duration. Because if I can get you to make a home in hell, Jesus, it won't seem that hot when I know I got to go there. Jeez. So what ends up happening is we decide, oh crap, I got to go back. What ends up happening is I got to do a visit to hell. I got to check in with the devil. Is there any new assignments you have for me? Is there any family you want me to torment? What do you want me to confuse my husband about today? How do you want me to irritate my children? How do you want me to not pay my debt? How do you want me to steal the tithe? How do you want me to annoy the people around me into seeing you as a God who does not care because all I do is critique and 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 critique, and I'm still not dealing with myself? So what ends up happening is the enemy sends you back on assignment because we don't believe that he has the authority to send us out. So what ends up happening is we go to get our marching orders. But then there's something strange that happens. We see here in this text that it says it leads to us being slaves to sin, which leads to death, or to obedience, which leads to righteousness. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a big fan of those TBN testimonies, Mike. You know, the ones where it's like the music starts playing and it sounds like, in the arms of the angel. And it's those sob stories where it's like, I was addicted to heroin, but I heard a gospel song on the radio, and I gave my life to Christ. I heard it. Helen Baylor said, then she hit her head and she said, I can remember it clear as day. I had an encounter. And what ends up happening is we find ourselves having an encounter with the presence of the living God. And what happens is the enemy loves you so much, because he can love you too. He can love the work you do for him. What ends up happening is the enemy knows the wealth that you have based upon your commitment. He'll allow you to experience the presence of God. He'll even go as far to allow you to get close enough to make covenant with God. And what ends up happening is he lets you get just far enough to pick up the will. And what ends up happening is he'll call you back and say, hey, do you really believe he can forgive you? Do you believe that those sins are covered? I'm talking about the bodies that are hidden. Do you believe that that's covered? The ones you didn't go to jail for, do you believe that's covered? Oh, stop playing with me. Stop. First 48 was made for something. Your friend just didn't snitch on you, but you still did it. Jesus. So what ends up happening is we have an encounter, and we end up finding ourselves getting closer and closer to the will of God. And we let ourselves untangle just enough to tie ourselves in covenant with Christ. Why is this important? I want you to see this today as clear as you've ever seen anything. The enemy does not mind you being a side chick. He does not care, because he knows at the end of the day, if he calls, you'll come running. Wow. Jesus. I don't mind you flirting with God. I don't mind you crying in that song that gets you every time. I don't mind you attending church. I know that church Motivate keeps saying you get a new beginning, but you don't believe it. So what ends up happening is the enemy will allow you, give me a little more room. All right, thank you. The enemy will allow you to find yourself giving your life to Christ. I just stomped on your theology. I can still be bound to sin and still say yes to Jesus. Absolutely. That's why you keep going back to the altar, because you don't believe it's stuck. So we see ourselves here raising our hands when he says, would you like to give your life to Christ? If you were to die today, do you know where you'd be going? You didn't make covenant because you were convinced. You made covenant because you were scared. Jesus. And we find ourselves saying yes to Jesus. And we say, oh, it's not that bad being with Christ. He doesn't ask for much. He just asks that I'm nice to people. He asks that I just follow him. He just asks that, I show up to church and I give. It's just $5. It's just $5. But what ends up happening is we make the decision to make this choice of choosing righteousness or death. It's that simple. I know you don't want it to be that clear, but do you want to die or do you want to live? Verse 17 goes on to say, but thanks be to God that though you used to be slaves to sin, you have come to obey from your heart the pattern of teaching that has now claimed your allegiance. Jesus, the pattern of teaching from your heart. And the problem is, you think you know too much to be taught. You read one book in the Bible, completed one devotional on YouVersion, went to one prophetic seminar on YouTube, and now all of a sudden you believe that you know it all. You done bought your ordination from online and you think, I have the ability to walk in the favor and the power of God. I'm launching a church and I shall be a bishop of the Lord's church. You foolish. You don't even know how to take the attacks of this earth, let alone deal with the ones in the spirit realm. You don't want none of that smoke. You don't want none of this smoke. Everybody wants to be the boss until the invoices come up and you got to deal with the spiritual magnitude of dealing not only with your own demons, but the ones of the people who you say are yours. Because sheep are dirty. And no matter how clean you make your tunic, you're going to get some mud on you. So we see here that here I am tethered. And what will end up happening is the enemy will allow me to keep wandering to the gates to get close to hear of the goodness of God. But if I don't let go of his nature, I'll never get close enough to make the decision to follow the will of God. To be taught but not learned is two different things. He goes on to say in the next verse this. Let's do it. You have been set free from sin and have become slaves to righteousness. It goes on in verse 19 and it says, I am using an example from everyday life because of your human limitations. Did the Bible just call me dumb? Yup. I'm making it plain to you because in your human limitations, you'll try to over-spiritualize something that's either ones or zeros. Rick is my guy. He says he believes in the binary. It's sometimes as simple as 1 or 0, black or white. We like to paint this beautiful rainbow picture of what God is calling us to. And I'm like a painting of a master, and he's putting his brush to the canvas of my heart. Either you with me or you not. I can hear the Lord saying, I'm sick of having to visit you like I got custody problems. This child support game is meaningless. And it says that I'm using an example from everyday life because of your human limitations. Just as you used to offer yourselves as slaves to impurity and to ever increasing wickedness, so now offer yourselves as slaves to righteousness, leading to hope. Ooh, I just cussed again. I'm not saying you got to pick up a new strength. I'm just asking you to put the same effort you did in that in me. Oh, y'all want to play games? Some of the greatest minds are shown when you try to hide sin. Ooh. I'm going to smoke this blunt, then I'm going to go into Ulta. I'm going to try different colognes to see what hides the smell. I'm going to pop the windows down, drive 70 miles per hour, spray the air freshener, and hope it clears it out. Well, maybe if I get a gym membership that's 24 hours after I sleep at her house, I can go take a shower before going home. We here? The same effort you put in try to hide something that God already knows, why are you not that crafty in the will? Well, I don't know how to talk to people about Jesus. I've never had a conversation. You talk to anyone who could show you an upside down pineapple to go into courtship. Oh, we talking. Y'all think I don't know? Talking about open relationships. When I come to your house and I see these upside down pineapples, I know you're not swinging from the pearly gates. You're swinging in your sexual proclivities. And the Lord is saying, do you think I do not see? Play games with me if you want to. You can pass whatever law you want to. You can make it all cool in legislation, but I still see you tethered. Oh, now y'all ain't gonna invite me over your house. I don't care. It says this, just as you used to offer yourselves as slaves to impurity and ever-increasing wickedness, so now offer yourselves as slaves to righteousness, leading to holiness. What ends up happening is we make the decision on this next verse, Mike. In verse 20, it goes on to say, when you were slaves to sin, you were free from the control of righteousness. At the very understanding of that, we let go of the will of God. Because I'd rather be free and roam in my sin to have to be self-aware on living holy. Let's do it, Cyril. I'd rather be free in my sinful ways than make the decision to follow the will of God, because I'd rather live life because I only got one to live. Drake out here catching bodies right now. Now is not the time to follow Drake. Oh, your pastor is up on game. What ends up happening is this. We decide based upon our desires, because the reality is you'd rather sin and know God knows than change your lifestyle so he can be pleased. All right, let's do it. You'd rather not let go of the thing that doesn't even love you. Sin don't love you. That group of friends you sin with do not love you. When you leave, they laugh at you, because at least among thieves, we know our hearts. But it's something when I see someone living a double life, I can't bangs with you. I can't rock with you because I can't trust you because you don't trust you. We can tell at the dope house when you show up in your church clothes. I see that WGTS sticker on the back of your car as you leave the motel. That's why we don't have MOTIV8 bumper stickers. You ain't finna get me in no mess. Cussing at people by the Chick-fil-A line. Handing out an invite card talking about be blessed. I'd rather sin. And the problem is the freedom of sin will make you believe, oh, I'm good. I still get to roam freely. I still get to go visit my friends in sin. I still get to go hang out with my partners. I still get to sleep around with her. She hasn't got pregnant yet. My dude. And at that moment, you have to make the choice. Do you want to follow God? Or do you want to follow Satan? It's that simple. You don't like to call it that because you don't want to believe that you're following anyone but Christ, but you're following Satan. And the problem is, for a time period of you following in sin, it feels like you're free. You don't even notice that you're bound anymore because you still can do the actions of church, still being bound to sin. I can still show up every Sunday and still be bound to sin. I can still try to lay hands on people and they swat my hand away because they know. I don't let everybody lay hands on me, Lamont. I just can't. I don't know what you about to try to transfer over. Where them hands been? Trying to push me down because you ain't got no power. I'll do everything I can to give myself approval to keep roaming in sin. But then something happens called conviction. And it goes on in verse 21 and it says, what benefit did you reap from the things of that time? You are now ashamed of. Those things result in death. And what ends up happening is we begin to feel a conviction because we know our choices do not have an eternity that looks good. When I'm aware now of my decisions and the repercussions that come with it, I'm now aware of how it's impacting my children. I'm now aware of how it's impacting my spouse. I'm now aware of how it's impacting my finances. You don't need a better job. You just need to stop doing all your OnlyFans subscriptions. You don't need a better job. Stop eating out. You don't need a better job. Take your behind and get on the metro and stop trying to drive up and down the road. It's called slugging. You don't even have the money for the car note, let alone the gas. All right. You got to make a choice. It says here, what benefit did you reap at that time from the things that you are now ashamed of? These things result in death. I said, well, Lord, maybe they don't know that they're not free. Because I get the ability to make my own choice. And someone said, is one of the greatest things that God did is give people free will? And I said, yes. Because he gives you the ability to choose him, but he also gives you the ability not to follow him. You make the decision. So what ends up happening is we start roaming, but this conviction hits home. And this conviction hits home to a point where it's saying, I'm longing to get back to the other side of what I had an encounter with. I'm sick of visitations. I want to have a residency. Okay. When you get a taste of the actual power of the Holy Spirit in the presence of God and the changing authority that he has, you'll chase to get back home. When you're sick and tired of being sick and tired of finding new drug dealers because everyone keeps getting arrested, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired of hopping on dating apps and swiping right, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired finding yourself smoking yourself to sleep, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired driving around to different ABC stores trying to find a stronger drink, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, sooner or later you'll want to get over. What ends up happening is we make a mistake. We believe that just because we made covenant with sin, we got to have a disagreement to break it off with sin. So we find ourselves pulling ourselves closer in because I want to get back to the place that I made the agreement. And the problem is you thought you were built that way, but you can't untie the knot. You can't untie the knot. You're doing everything you can. You're going to counseling. You're addressing your abusers. You done told your mama on how she messed you up. You've done everything to go back to the root. You blamed your ex. You blamed your children for not listening. You've placed the blame and everything on the people you believe that are the root of your problem. But when you can't undo the knot, you try to carry the brick over. Because if I can get to Jesus with this attached to me, even though I made a decision to put it on me, he'll set me free. Yes, he will. But the problem is he already did and you went back. This was a choice. So what ends up happening is we get convicted and we submit ourselves to the will of God. But the problem is, the thing about God, he won't allow you to roam on level ground. He's going to call you higher. Okay. What does higher look like? It means you have to change the way you talk. It means you have to change the way you move. It means you have to change the way you treat your spouse. It means you have to change the community that you're around. You can't keep going to the strip club when you want to be submitted. You have to, I don't care how good the wings are, get out. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. What ends up happening is we're called higher. And we release ourselves just enough to get to the first step. And as soon as oh, dagnabbit. Well, instead of smoking every day, I'll just do it once a week. It gets me a little bit higher. Let me keep going. Dag nabbits. I won't sleep with her and her mom. I'll just sleep with her. Oh, y'all, what do y'all think these movies are made out of? Truce. Y'all out here trying to live out porns in real life. Oh, we're here. So what ends up happening is I get to the top of what God is calling me to, and I'll stay here because I can see where he's calling me. And if I can just see the promised place, I'll rest here. But the problem is, it's hard to sin when you're elevated. Let's talk. It's hard to sin when you're in a high place because there's more eyes watching what you do. That's why when people are hungry for leadership positions and they're hungry to be a politician, they're hungry to be an influencer, they're hungry to be this and that, they want to be an artist, they want to be all these things. You don't know what sin is like when people are watching you trying to catch you slipping. You got domestic sin. You don't know nothing about this domestic, international, worldwide, Mr. 305 sin. You're not about this life. People talk about all the time, Pastor, you like pastoring. Why don't you post and you do all these things? Because people who want to see you sin will decipher words that you never spoke. See me posting myself at a restaurant. Where's Pastor Patience? Mind her business. She's across the table. If I can catch you in sin. So what ends up happening is you make a decision. You know what, God, I'm sick of being tired. I'm sick of being sick of being sick of being sick of just being sick of being tired. I'm going to go over. So what ends up happening is we loose ourselves by making a decision that I'm going to do a 30-day detox. I'm going to do a bloodline cleanse. I'm going to have a family meeting. I'm going to send a letter to the person who hurt me, and that's it, that's all. And what ends up happening is I get enough freedom to cross over. And Mike, what ends up happening is I get over. Oh no, I'm good. You don't got to follow me. He got me. Though will the righteous man fall 7 times. What ends up happening is when we get to the other side, we use sin to repel us down. Because I don't want the reality of falling into righteousness. I want to land in it. So what ends up happening is we find ourselves making the decision, oh, well, I'll let myself down slowly. You said I have to come to church on Sundays? Yeah. All right, I'll try. You said I got to join a dream team? Yeah. All right, I'll try. You said I got to follow the rules of the honor code and policy? Yeah, you can't keep sleeping around. Oh, never mind. Then that conviction hits because you almost caught something. I'll keep going back down, Jesus. I'm going to go back down. You said I have to have relationship with people that I may not agree with. All right, I'll try. You said I got to rip up the divorce papers because what I made a big deal out of wasn't on them. It was actually on my holy righteousness. Okay, I'll try. And the problem is, we'll get to the other side of what God has called us over, but we can't pick up him because we won't let go of it. We find ourselves doing something that we believe is the will of God. We think that we can cheat code Jesus. Well, if I just tether my sin to his righteousness, I always have a way to find my way back home. The problem is that is not your home. Now, you can make it your home. You can make your bed in hell. But you got to make the decision at some point of your life will I let go? What has sin done for you lately? What has it given you? What has it added into your life? As we close this, you got to look back over your life. When you think about the goodness of God, I want you to also think about the wickedness of sin. What did it take from you? What relationships did it almost destroy? What children did it damage? How much in counseling bills have you racked up because of you wanting your way? How much money have you wasted on going on benders? How much money have you left on the blackjack table? What did sin cost you? Before we can even dive into spiritual deliverance, we're going to get there and we're going to have ourselves a time. Because I'm truly believing here at MOTIV8 Church, we will not be bound. But I want to look here as we move out and we're out of here. I'm trying to tell you we're going home. Galatians chapter 5, verse 1. It says, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm. Then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Some of us let go of sin, but we're not willing to throw the rope back on the other side. You have to be so convinced that a life with Christ is worth everything. That not only will I break my covenant, I'll break my connection. I'm willing to throw it back over. Pick up the goodness of God. And the problem is you have to change your stance. You've been wrapping yourself in the goodness of God, but you got to tie yourself to it. I got to tie myself to the goodness of God. I need to tie myself to the understanding that I did not deserve to be saved. But it's for Christ that I'm free. And though the world tries to call me back, I'm free. We see here that it says, do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. We have to take intentional steps. I want you to be intentional. Be intentional. You have to be intentional on knowing that I made the decision to tie myself to sin. It's my decision daily to die to myself. Because though the you of Tuesday died to your flesh, the old man is going to wake up with you on Wednesday. And the old you on Wednesday is going to have a new hunger for what you denied on Tuesday. Daily, I choose to follow God. Daily, I choose to submit to Christ. Daily, I choose to die to my flesh. Daily, I choose to choose the right people around me who I do life with. Daily, I choose what I watch. Daily, I choose what I listen to. Daily, I choose who I get into covenant with. Daily, I choose the job that I choose. I don't care about the salary, the lifestyle I'm in doing. The job is not conducive to my growth and maturity in Christ. Daily, I choose. We have to make the decision. You have to seek support. No one likes to hear this. You need support. You need people who will hold you accountable, who will be able to look at you and say, that's not the right road. Sin will have you trying to pass off the rope of sin as the righteousness of God. You can talk church. You can do service, you can do it all, but you don't got no fruit. You need people in your life who will check your produce before they check your productivity. Because though you're moving, you're not producing. And we see here as we close this out, I want to go through this last verse here and we're out of here. Hebrews chapter 12. Why is it important to have community and have people watching you? It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, it was the belief of the believers then that those who were ancestors who followed God righteously, it was as if they were watching over, as though they were seeing the actions of the followers of Christ. And it says, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that is so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked for us.
What an amazing word. Thank you so much for being here with us at MOTIV8 Church. If this word impacted you in any way, hit the like button and let us know in the comments. But take it a step further. Share it with a friend, share it with a family member that you know their life could be changed by this word. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss anything that's happening within the life of the ministry. And if you would like to partner with us financially, click the link in the description box. We love you and we'll see you next week.